Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On a snow melt day here, the sun is out finally here in Alexandria, Virginia. I want to congratulate first off the Seattle Seahawks for that great Super Bowl win over the weekend and just seeing just a phenomenal defense that allowed the offense not to take risks and to be able to win that game. It was phenomenal. Defense wins Super Bowl championships, and I think it wins
That's what you always taught us.
world championships. I'm Riki Ellison. I am the founder and chairman of the Missile Defense Advocacy Alliance. It's an alliance that I founded 20 years ago, but I've been involved with missile defense for 40 years and got involved with Peace Through Strength with Ronald Reagan back in 1980 and the beginning of the Street Defense Initiative. We have a singular mission. Our mission is to make our nation safer and the world safer through the deployment, the evolution, and development of missile defenses. And we're seeing that happen in real life.
That's right.
Every day, saving millions of lives. And just an absolute necessity for every nation in the world to have a capability on that. And we certainly are grateful for the president to initiate the Golden Dome to give us better coverage than we've ever had in the history of our country. Today, this is our 91st virtual, and we have the honor to have the Honorable Dale Marks here, the acting deputy undersecretary for acquisition and sustainment. It's awesome to have you here. I also want to congratulate you on being a SHIELD alumni.
Right.
Our first graduating class of our USC MDAA partnership on SHIELD about 5 years ago. So it's great to have a graduate here. Our discussion today is going to go directly on the NDS 2026 National Defense Strategy document that was released by the Secretary of War a Friday or two ago on this, where the whole premise is peace through strength. And the four major points that are outlined in front: number one, defend the U.S. homeland; number two, deter China in the Indo-Pacific through strength, not confrontation; number three, increase burden sharing with U.S. allies and partners; and number four, supercharge the U.S. defense industry base.
That's right.
Missile defense is in the core of each four of those elements. And certainly, I think the fourth one, the biggest for our future, our security, to get that right on top of that. And I want to go into that because I'm calling it revolution. You call it supercharge. You call it reprioritizing. Right. I'm calling it a revolution. And I don't think we've seen one. And you may go to Ronald Reagan when we went through that peace through strength, Cold War apex against the Soviet Union to break the Soviet Union, and missile defense was part of that breakage. I think you have to go all the way back to September, I think it was September 1, 1939, when President Roosevelt put General George Marshall in charge of the Army, and the revolution that he did to the acquisition department, to the Department of Defense, legendary, from 160,000 to 8 million, and built the greatest innovation, the greatest acquisition the world has ever seen. And just that was born that way. And he had, I think, had 43 generals, and he fired 32 of them to start off. So it's a culture change, and I think this is what this is too.
Absolutely.
It is a culture change here. So we've had the privilege over the last 20 years to visit hundreds and hundreds of bases, ships, our allies, and we know we've seen the lack of inventory, of capacity, and it is ridiculous with missile defense. I'm just speaking missile defense capabilities on this. And that it has to be addressed. And I want to thank you for seen what I saw a week or two ago when you announced the increase in the fat production and the PAC-3 production. But we have a problem. We have a lot of problems. But we have a couple key problems here that we're in wars of these cost of attrition wars, and our ability to shoot down things is 10 times, 15 times more than the weapons being made to come at it. And we've seen this in the Red Sea every day. We've seen this, and we're seeing this in Ukraine every day. We simply cannot afford to keep that pace, especially on a bigger conflict with a much better and bigger opponent. You can't do this without a revolution of getting out of the way of what we've done in the past. And all the hurdles, all the policies, all the stuff that has driven pricing up, driven the lack of capacity, and in some cases with our missile defense capabilities, our foreign allies in the Middle East are driving the production, not the United States, on our own stuff. And so that has to be addressed on it. And let's just look at those four things here. Let's start with the U.S. homeland. And I think people don't realize that General Guggenheim is 175 billion, maybe 200 billion to develop an architecture and a system to defend the United States from everything. And that, by the way, he's just building it. He passes that off to you as the acquisition sustainment to sustain that architecture, right? Which you have to look at, obviously, and you have to add your input to make sure you can afford to be able to do it cheaper, quicker, faster, and to help him get this thing out there, and the president, in 3 years. I mean, I think there's movement. You have to go, and you cannot do this the way you've been doing any missile defense in the history of our country. So we are leaving that type of way, and you're leading the charge on this aspect of it. And then on the second point, on the Indo-Pacific, we're starting with Guam and our forward operating bases, which you were also in charge of, with both persistent missile defense capabilities for those forward operating bases and your ability to do expeditionary capabilities with that. But those are illfully not, they don't have capacity at all. I've been there. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that we don't have the capacity to defend. And again, none of us, no, you're not even close to what Ukraine's been able to do on a nightly basis to do that. We've got to deal with that aspect of it. And I think you look at the allied cooperation, and we're certainly going to be looking at Canada, Japan, Australia to come in and bring part of this, and Europe to do this. And we've seen a little bit of that in Ukraine, where the NATO has done a great job bringing other nations in to support. But this is a much bigger burden, and certainly we have to incentivize that aspect of that on it. So I do also want to have you address a little bit on the critical minerals and how important that part of it, as you go through your kill train production, how important that part of it is, because that's come up in a lot. And then finally, I think the other thing is the mobilization. We can't use 17 C-17s or 19 C-17s to move one Patriot unit. We got to change that. You're going to have to get the capacity for the warfighter in front with speed and agility on that. So we had the great honor to have Dale speak to our SHIELD team. We had our SHIELD program, our 2026 SHIELD program in the Pentagon about 3 weeks ago. And Dale gave a phenomenal presentation on this current situation. So I've asked him to come in here and sort of bring that presentation to the public on how you explained the situation we're in this country to go forward. So, ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Dale Marks.
So, Riki, thank you first up for the invitation, and to those of us watching, thank you for your time today as well. I do want to go back to a couple of things first, Ricky. And I mentioned this to the Shield class because I think it's critically important to first talk just about the change of perspective for myself. I've been doing this for a long time, both in uniform as well as a federal civilian. And then having the privilege of the president who's been leading us, setting peace through strength, giving us the charge to go fast. And that has been looking back at what Shield and what the program did, how it taught me. I often go to one of the greatest engineering professors the world knows, who's been awarded,
Yep.
and how Professor Siegel really, through systems engineering, the way that we think. I think if I had to sum up the program, right, you're taught to think differently. You're taught how to think across the spectrum of what we fight through, right? And the reason I say that is with really no expectation, but the humble privilege of getting to sit now in the seat that I do, is how to think that way and lead it. And that's really what has been, I think, at the core so much of what we've been trying to do. Because as you said, and I hope this is like a 12-hour podcast because we have a lot to cover. But I think, right, it's not just the one thing. So often when we talk about missile defense, we get very quickly onto hey, I need a THAAD, I need a PAC-3 missile, I need an SM-6, hey, I need something that will do that. And we've talked about the massive engineering problems, right? Whether I'm doing mid-course, whether I'm doing glide, wherever I am within the trajectory, just talking that problem set is difficult enough. Now, add to that, as you said, right, we've been to the installations, we've looked at the things that we need to look at. We've looked at how do I power these systems? How do I ensure that the command and control of these systems is giving that? I had a conversation yesterday morning in General Guillot's office, and we're talking about command and control systems and how we get the warning times and how we assess those things, right? So it is a system of systems that we're trying to peel that back. But let's go back to the first part of defending the homeland. As we think about how we do that, first and foremost, to my partner General Guillot and the strategic nature of what he is trying to do day in and day out. That is, in the conversation we had yesterday, is about the evolving nature of the threat, how rapidly evolving it is from all aspects, and I don't mean evolving necessarily purely in the technical sense. But as you said, in what we're learning in Ukraine, in a way of doing reveal and conceal, in the way that our adversaries think about the problem set, is so different than the way that we did years ago. And so everything today to us, and as I had an opportunity yesterday to spend 3 hours on Capitol Hill, there explaining about the threat and explaining how we see the threat differently, our approach to how we protect our homeland has to be different. Okay, so let's talk about some of those investments first and foremost. The charge from the secretary and from the president was speed and volume. Speed and volume, right? So speed, I need to go fast. The days of I have a limited amount of magazines and a very limited depth, those days are over. Have to fill the magazines.
Right.
Okay. Now, the way that we're approaching that is I have existing systems, right? So PAC-3, some of the best systems that we have, right? The things that we have today, we are taking our proven systems, which oftentimes, by the way, are exquisite systems. They're very complicated, they're very expensive, but they're also highly effective. And so we want to, first and foremost, I need to increase the production rate, the speed of which I get the volume that I need to go to war. You said it very correctly, right? When you look out and we go across how many reloads that I can carry and what is the depth of my ammunition, my magazines, I have to go out there and I have to fill those up quickly, right?
Yeah.
So as we say, right, the exquisite nature of our fighting force, we have the best fighting force in the world. The way that the technological advantages that we bring to the fight, bar none, are better than anybody else in the world. But at some point, pure quantity can overcome quality. And so we have to make sure that I'm getting out, first and foremost, the systems that I have developed, and I need to get those to the warfighter. In fact, we have a saying in the department that says the most expensive weapon system on the planet is the one that shows up in the hands of the warfighter one day late. So I can't afford to have something show up into the warfighter late. So we're going to accelerate that. And that's why you see the deals the way that we do that. The way that we're working after the deals is I need massive ramp rates. So for example, when you look at PAC-3, we're going from an annual rate of roughly 500 to 2,000. And then as soon as we secured that deal, the president came back and said, I want more. So now we're going to focus on how can I increase? How can I go faster?
Is
How
this
do I
going to go
do that?
across all the weapon systems?
This is going to go across
the
all.
SM6s, the SM3s,
SM3s, all of those, the 1Bs, everything that we have in the inventory, THAAD, Tomahawk, everything that we need, right? Air-to-air systems,
so
air-to-ground systems.
We're good with that because we don't have anything that's cheaper, quicker right now.
Right now.
To substitute, or that's coming.
The,
but you're going
right.
What about the NGI? I mean, that's pretty expensive.
They all are, right?
The GBI systems on that, but you have the funding to do this. From where is Congress giving you that support to do this, or is the administration asking for that extra funding to do this?
That's right. So you saw the president a few weeks ago ask for a $1.5 trillion top line. So we are programming and planning to what that would look like. And so that means we're making very strategic investments. And those investments are, the way I guess I would frame it is this. When we talk about the word investment, it would typically be, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to make a massive investment into your defense industry. And I'm going to give you all the facilitation up front and all the CapEx and all of that money up front. I'm going to give you all the grants up front. And then I'm going to sit back and I'm going to wait for you to produce a weapon system. We're not doing that anymore, right? This is back to the days. You said it well, right? Let's go back to 1939. What did we do? We stimulated the industrial economy of this nation, and we went to everything, non-traditionals, right? The Fords of the world were building airplanes, right? So we want to get back to that kind of massive scale. So let me talk about the mature systems. So on the mature system side, it's deals that I can go get speed, volume in the systems today.
Speed if those mature systems are not or have not been built for speed for the last 20 years.
Yeah, great.
They're not there. They don't trust your judgment because they'll wait it out and they think that production line will just go next year when the next president comes or the next administration comes. It's gone. So their stockholders are not going to do that, right?
Yeah.
That's so how do you beat that?
So you saw the executive order that the president put out that says we're holding them accountable. We have metrics where we're measuring the companies. We sit down with the CEOs on a weekly basis. We can tell them the production line. We're deploying experts into the industry to go improve the quality and the performance of what we're doing. We're getting after second, third, fourth tier and beyond suppliers to make sure that they have the same predictive nature, right? What we're trying to do is the first question that we got out of the industry was, give me a stable demand signal. So we did that.
Yeah.
All right. So we've come back, we started talking multi-year deals. This is the stable demand signal. This is what I need you to produce. The next part is how they're going to reinvest not only into their own production, but into their second and third, into the supply base. So we build that out. And then the other piece of this that we haven't really mentioned yet, but I'll go to is our workforce. We have to invest, and that's what we're doing right now. We're going to make large investments in the workforce because I need to ramp up the skill. I need to ramp up the plants. And so that's why you see us going to some of the non-traditionals as well. I need to go to scale. I need to build out the scale of the industry. So think back with me again, back to World War II. What we did was we went as a nation to mobilize the entire industrial base to come back up so that I would have the capacity to meet the need that I do today. And that's the path that we're on right now.
But when you say accountability, they've promised numbers and they don't get those numbers, right? So what is the accountability to them if they don't perform and produce the capacity that you are requesting? What is that?
Yeah, so some of that accountability comes from everything from we watch stock buybacks. We hold the company accountable. Well, first and foremost is if you want to do business with the United States, you're going to do it the way that the president has said that we're going to go do this and the way the secretary has driven this, which means you go like, well, who else is going to give that capability? We have alternate capabilities. We're going to develop alternatives. Right. So the intent is not only am I going to go and invest in what I have today. We have great suppliers. Make no mistake, right? Absolutely. We have that. We can do far better. And you mentioned the culture change. The culture change was they needed to get on board. And I will tell you, for the most part, they're very much on board right now. Now, stockholder shareholders, what do they see? Let me give you an example of this, Riki, of why I think we get focused on the negatives when I think the positives and the growth, which is what we promised, is such an incentive. We did a deal with Lockheed Martin, and we started talking about that deal. We did an investment deal with and they were concerned a little bit going into it where they see the growth, how, because they're used to shareholder revenues and those types of things. The day we announced the deal, stock growth was 11%. So from the immediate moment that we said that, what the public and what the industry saw us do was they believe us, and they still do because the numbers are way up. That what we're seeing is growth in the industry. So it's a win for the developers, it's a win for our industry partners, and it's a win for the American taxpayer because we're getting out of this that we do now. What we move on from here, right? Is we
let's stay with what we got with the legacy systems. Because what about all those processes and oversight and ridiculous amounts
Great
of
question.
risk adversity that has paid a lot of salaries and a lot that's created increase in price and created length of getting the product out. How are you cutting through that culture?
Yeah,
that's been built for 20, 30, sometime all the way back to Magna era.
Absolutely.
So how are you doing that with the legacy system?
Yeah. So can I admit right up front that we are part of the problem?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So here's why I say that, right? So one of the very first things that we did, so back in November, the secretary rolled out the acquisition transformation strategy. And that strategy had multiple components, but one of the keys was we had to cut the bureaucracy and we had to change the culture. Okay. On our side, right?
How are you doing that?
So one of the first things that we did was using some advanced tools. We went in and we started scrubbing the FARs and the DFARs. We've already eliminated 2,700 separate regulations that are not necessary for us to cut through that. We're doing deals at the heads of the corporation level. And what we're trying to drive through, we talk about it this way, right? We are taking on the acquisition risk ourselves so that our warfighter doesn't have to take on their risk. And so part of that was we did capability portfolio management, giving that portfolio manager the ability to do their own fiscal trades. We reinforce success so we can go faster. So on the government side, and we even made changes as now the Warfighting Acquisition University in the way we train and do business every single day. And we're pushing that out through the workforce so we can change the culture of the government in the terms of how we do deals. The second part of that is then going into the companies, because the companies themselves, quite frankly, reflected who we were. And so they were operating at a speed and a pace that we were. All right. And so now what we've done is we have, it's called Business Operators for National Defense. We are deploying hundreds of former CEOs and CFOs, great Americans dedicated to this nation, that are helping our partners, our industry partners, go faster. One prime example of that, we went into one of the shipyards. We deployed this person, some of our bond operators, for 90 days. In the first 90 days, by them walking through, observing how we're doing business, we increased the touch point in the production by 15% in just the first 3 months of work. And so we're affecting not only the way that we, the government, are operating, streamlining processes, cutting out the middleman, cutting out the additional regulations that are really, quite frankly, not needed, handling our contracts as a portfolio so that we can move faster, make the trades that we need to make at a portfolio decision-making level, not getting caught up in a bureaucracy of multiple checks. And then at the end of the day, helping our industry partners go faster in their own supply chains, their own businesses, so that they can achieve what we need to do.
Let me take you out of the services acquisition,
Sure.
right? Because now you have politics involved, and each service wanted to get as much of that money as possible to reload their specific capabilities. So how do you balance that between the Space Force, Army, Navy, Air Force, the Marines, etc. That for missile defense. How does that work?
It has been a really interesting journey working with our service partners. And what I mean interesting journey is because in the building, in the Pentagon, right, the pendulum continues to swing sort of back and forth cyclically about who is managing what. And what we walked into was our services who did an incredibly great job. Our service acquisition executives are fantastic folks. We've got great staffs. They have a vision, but their vision was tied to what the services believed that they needed to do for their services. Our responsibility, I mentioned at the outset, General Gio, Admiral Paparo, right?
But they're joint. They're joint commanders. They're not service guys.
But let me come back to that, right? Because my combatant commanders are my customers. right? Who I'm looking to is my combat commanders in the Joint Force to register that demand signal because, it's Admiral Paparo who's trying to fight that Indo-Pacific
Yeah.
fight. Okay, that comes back to the services, but the services are making trades internal to their own. And what the secretary and the deputy have told us to go do is that's our job to manage that, to meet those needs, right? To make sure that we are actually setting that picture. And when I say it's been an interesting
So it
journey,
hasn't been done before, or they didn't do a very good job
It-
on this, or they let the service chiefs run.
yeah, I would say it again, that pendulum swing was it had gone one way and it moved back over to the services where the services were more in the lead.
And the COCOMs.
Then and so now what we're trying to do is say, look, through that, you see General Mahoney, the vice chairman, right, is making a change in the JSIDS process, the way the JROC, the Joint Requirements Oversight Council operates. We're changing the way that we're looking at those requirements. It's not a service specific stovepipe. Take for example, drones, right? Every service was in the small UAS business. Everybody was going down a different pathway. And ultimately, what the deputy said was, we're done doing that. We're going to make one executive agent for all of that responsibility. We're going to pull all of that up. We're going to standardize it. We're going to do enterprise level contracts. It's more cost efficient. It's faster. It gives us the capabilities we need and gets them deployed faster. And so it's not that our service partners are doing bad things. It's we needed to reset the strategic vision in light of the national defense strategy and the things that we've been told to go do. And so therefore, we're achieving that success at a rate we've not seen before. And we're getting more out of the money that we're spending.
I wouldn't say police, but to make sure that that money goes to increasing the capacity of the systems that you want done, as you know, the chiefs like other things that may overcome that and leverage that. So
Right.
how do you that's another check.
Yeah. And a lot of times our service partners, right, they'll need to make trades within inside of their portfolio. That's kind of what you're alluding to. And so what we have to look at is our service partners are there, but as they begin to do that, that comes back up to OSW, right, where we have the ability through where Honorable Duffy is looking at that based on his authorities as the executive agent for all of those things, and then he's making and ensuring that those strategic trades are going in the right direction on behalf of the secretary, right? So we want to make sure that we're walking a pathway, and I'm broadening out from just we've been talking a lot about munitions and small US, but I mean this is everything from right. This is ships, submarines, this is airplanes, this is advanced fighter systems, this is space-based systems. All of those strategic trades, we need to make sure that we're driving it in support of the NDS and in support of the combat commanders to meet the requirements.
Can you just get a little bit more specific? Because I want to get specific.
Yeah.
Because we had a requirement for cruise missile defense to the Army in 2012, I think.
Right.
Well, IBCS has been since 2000,
Mm-hmm.
and you've spent billions. Where's the accountability to get that in play today?
Yeah.
It's not in play today.
Yeah. So fair question. And so
how are you going to change that process
Right.
that's allowed that to happen without a warfighter who all those COCOMs are demanding that capability?
Absolutely.
I'm just using one case.
Sure.
There are plenty of cases, but I'm just asking on this case.
Yeah. So no, fantastic question. And so one is to take a look at again, what is the demand signal and what are we trying to drive towards? Okay. So that's part of it. The other piece of this though is a regular and recurring drumbeat. What we're doing is MDAP reviews. So, major defense acquisition programs.
This is on service acquisition.
Right. But now, because we're using a more corporate enterprise kind of a look, what we're trying to do is pull that in so we can see those things and drive forward on those. Right. Part of it is to go back. The reason we started looking at new deals is the deals that we were doing and the way that those requirements were originally laid in, we're not achieving what we wanted to achieve, right?
Okay.
Going back to the question that you asked, right? Accountability. Am I actually fielding the thing that I want to field in the time frame I'm supposed to do it in? If not, what should we do with it? Either I need to find something that can and cancel that other program, or I need to accelerate the thing that I promised you 10 years ago I was going to build.
Are we doing that?
We are doing that today.
And what example?
Right? And so for example, so we have regular recruiting. In fact, there's one going to take place tomorrow, right? We're bringing all the service acquisition executives to the table with Honorable Duffy. And that is our opportunity to go and walk through it line by line, program through program. What is the status of the program? Where are we at? What do I need to do to accelerate that? Is it on time? Why is it not on time? What do I need to accelerate that? Is it so far past the point of recovery that I need to go a different direction, right? All of those are the kind of now very strategic and very directional choices that are being made inside the ANS. So in acquisition,
There's no too big to fail. Those are, everything's on the
Look,
table.
as I said, the most expensive weapon system is the one that's a day late in the hand of the warfighter. So, the answer here, right? I'm going to go back to how I started. Speed and volume. If I'm going to do that, we talk about it this way now, right? One of the things that's in the strategy is an 80% commercial solution. So if I can get an off-the-shelf product that I can get into the hands of the warfighter.
But that's not legacy. We're still on legacy right
I know.
now, right?
Well,
we'll get into the innovation, new stuff,
but see, and the reason I do this is because we merge that in our brain. I don't have time to stay on one system. So we're merging the advanced technologies into the legacy systems and moving as quickly as possible. Those could be upgrades. Those could be new systems. So how do I take an old system and make it go faster? Sometimes that means I need to go to a non-traditional partner who can produce that. Maybe that means I need to go direct to a supplier and start to simulate the supplier. Maybe it's, as you said before, let's talk just for a second, critical minerals, right? The reason we're investing so deeply in critical minerals is to build enough of a bench stock that I can accelerate the production capacity that I'm doing both on my legacy systems and on my new systems. So it's not I'm just going to make the program go faster. I'm not just going to make a cruise missile go faster. I'm going to push here while I'm also pushing on the new systems as I let that competition play out so that I can see how do I get things into the hands of the warfighter more quickly.
It seems for missile defense for sure, if you can lower the PK from 97% or 98% down to 80%, the cost savings would be remarkable. But you would have to have capacity to do that.
And that's the strategy, right? Because if I can shoot two, right, as opposed to one exquisite weapon, if I can shoot two at a lower cost and still achieve the same effect.
Are we doing that yet?
We are absolutely dropping on that.
I know with new systems that you're talking about having these new lower PKs fit into the legacy systems. Is that what we're talking about? Or are you talking about a straight brand new system with commercial input? Because you can't bring commercial into the legacy systems. It's too late.
The answer is yes to both. Okay. Because there's opportunity out there as we look at it. Are there opportunities for co-production? Does everything I need to produce today have to cost me $5 million a round? Or are there opportunities for me to use systems, right? Some of it too is the technical nature of which we produce our systems. So for example, if I know, here's a rationale, right? When you look at things that are going on in Ukraine and other places, right? Why don't they have to have nuclear hardened electro-optic computer chips and boards? And the answer is because as soon as they build them, they shoot them. I'm not worried about shelf stable. I'm not worried about some of those, right? So can I adopt some of those techniques in the production lines as we're doing it based upon what we're doing to accelerate both the production line, speed that up, but also understanding that, right, again, I'm going to take the acquisition risk on as opposed to taking on the warfighter risk. If I can get it into the hands of the warfighter and employ it tomorrow, so much the better. Now I'm ahead of the game as opposed to being behind.
How do you view, let's go from the service chiefs to the Missile Defense Agency, MDAA, and how you change that culture to get out faster, quicker, test faster, quicker. I know that's his culture, speed, is it? But how are we leveraging that better than it is today and better than it was last? Because it did some remarkable stuff with the GBIs, but we got to get that machine rolling to do the production aspects of the development. What's your thoughts on MDA on this?
Well, first and foremost, I think we have great partners there, and all of us are working through the culture piece of this. So that's one. Two, I would also just say, and this is not my alibis up front, right? But everybody is going through right now. We're reinvigorating the workforce. We went through a period of time where we lost a lot of experience, and we're reinvigorating that. What I would also tell you though is our younger workforce is incredible. And so they're bringing us new ideas and fresh looks at things that we're trying to get after. For my MDA partners, and include probably most specifically my PA fires guys, right? They are driving very, very hard. And so it's more of the understanding of the corporate look. Remember, as we do the deals, they're actually implementing and driving this forward. What they do for us is the ability to give us back the metrics that we talked about in terms of the accountability, their ability to be there on the floor. They're the ones who are most integrated with our production lines. And they're the ones who are looking out and going, we can go faster in these areas. and then giving that back to us so we can make the changes. If it's a policy change or production change, we can make those things happen. And so it's an evolution, right? We're doing this at a speed, not to use the overtrack, we're flying the airplane while we're building it, but we're really trying to change a culture, and culture change is hard.
But, and I go back to MDA, testing is so damn expensive,
Mm-hmm.
right? To test an NGF. And we're not risk takers anymore because of the failures and the test process that we went through in the early 2000s. Where back with Schriever, you failed 10 in a row or 13 in a row and you're acceptable.
Right.
Are we at that level yet to force them to fail fast and fail a lot to get to where they need, instead of making sure everything is 100% correct and before you even test the damn thing to go?
Yeah.
Because that seems to be. Let me just ask you that.
Yeah,
then,
sure.
Then do we need to have these physical tests, or are we good enough with innovation now to have simulation labs, automation labs that you can reduce some of that cost to do that? Or does that matter to you on the testing part of this?
Yeah. So first, as a former tester, test is critical to everything that we do. So I want to make sure that we understand whether it's dropping a bomb off an airplane or shooting a missile, right? Test is critical to what we do. We want that weapon system to work. But the directive is, and you said it well, and that is test fast, test frequently, right? It's not test, study forever, come back, maybe do another test.
That's a culture,
right?
It's a culture.
So the risk calculus is this, but also, right, with advanced technologies, AI systems, computer simulations, we can get to a level of sophistication much more quickly. That's not to build exquisite systems. It's I can know and understand as a tester where we're going. And remember, I'm doing developmental and operational testing at the same time now. It's not one in a linear fashion. Everything is being developed simultaneously so that we can go more quickly. We want to test rapidly. We want to go through a lot of rounds. And then the other part, let me just flip, because we often think about it from the military side of the test componency. When we go back in, certification and how we do the certification process in the plants themselves is a critical part of this. When we test in the plants, right, if I've got a massive lot, right now in the past, the way it was done is I tested every single item. That means if I want to bake a weapon, I have to wait 48 hours. And then I go back and I see, and then I go to the next one, and then I go to the next one. That is a long, laborious process. Well, can I do that in a different way today? And this is what we're working on to make sure that we can validate this and move forward. And we are moving pretty quickly on this, is our ability to change the nature of the way that we test and certify things so that we go like, this works, this works, this works. Okay, let's get onto the next lot. Let's change what we're doing here, the way that we do business, right? So we want to be able to increase production so that we're not slowing things down by the nature of the way that we do test. Here's the other part. We have to have the data, right? The reason we test is I need the data so that I can do that. But now with the capabilities of advanced artificial intelligence and my ability to access and analyze data more quickly, it means I can accelerate the testing process at the same time. So there's multiple avenues to make testing go faster. Will I ever get completely out of testing? No, I want to test fast. I want to fail fast. I want to get the changes in fast. And then I want to get it into the hands of the warfighter as quickly as I
Well, you look at Ukraine and how quickly they develop.
Absolutely.
They don't go through this process. They don't go through the Death Valley. They don't go through. How are we? I mean, they take risk.
They do, but they're also in a different nature of what they do. Their lines from production to the front line are very short.
But are we trying to do that on the edge?
We're
with some of the stuff with printing, 3D printing on the edge at the brigade level or the battalion level.
Yep.
To be able to do that. Is that a big part of this movement that you're doing?
Services are clearly moving in that direction. We're still working through some of the additive pieces of this, but no, in fact, Honorable Michaels from the research and engineering side of the house, right? The experimentation that we're doing is going to drive us to a much faster, much more capable system in the long run. And so, no, we are learning tons and we are very interactive with this. So I don't want to discount that, right? This is, again, legacy things, future things, right? But as we talk the difference, at the scale that I'm talking about at production lines, right? When I'm producing thousands of things at a time and I need to get those out, there's one approach. When I'm doing things that I can do tactically, that's a different approach.
Right.
What we don't want to do is be so prescriptive, either at the OSW level or else at the services level, that we can't adapt to the very nature of the problem set that we're trying
How
to
do you
get
help
to.
the warfighter mobilize and move munitions to the front?
Yeah,
Quick, especially in the Pacific, right?
sure.
Where distance is tyranny, and it's a difficult thing to do.
Hmm.
You might not be able to do it in conflict.
Yeah. Great
So-
question. So we're working through contested logistics, right? So got a team within ANS that does the contested logistics process, along with my Transcom, DLA, and other partners and the joint staff. Part of that is a strategic look, and without getting into classified, right, a strategic look at where do I need things to be. Part of it's, right, of course, let's go back to Admiral Papar, right? So he has told us what he needs, given the nature of what he's trying to solve, that problem set. So it's both, are there advanced ways I can get things to him? Are there the traditional ways that I get things to him? Can I pre-position things? Can I make things in theater that I want to do, right? So can I do co-production with our partners and our allies? Can I store in new locations, right? All of that is the work that we're doing today, that is pushing things out in a way that allows us to access that. But let me give you this. This is going to sound like it's a very small tactical thing. One of the things that we looked at and we're continuing to refine is our ability to take from industry ways to apply how we load things and how I use space on a transport ship. And that seems like that's a very dull thing to be talking about, right? But I want to be able, in the past it was, I might only put certain objects onto a transport, but I wouldn't commingle things on that same transport. Well, a commercial carrier is going to cube out to the max extent possible because it costs.
Right.
So we've gone back and looked at what is my supply chain? How long is my supply chain? Do I need alternate sources from a different direction to shorten that supply chain? What is the cost of my fuel? How much stuff can I put onto a logistics ship? Can I transport that by different means? Can I produce it in a different
But
place?
some of the exotic weapons, like a hypergalaxy, you can't do that.
In some
So-
cases, that's true.
And the
right?
exotic stuff, but
But again, what we're trying to get back to, as you said, I don't have enough C-17s in the
To do
world to do everything that I need to move. So I also need to look at that problem. All of those are being looked at so we can solve.
let's go to how do you incentivize a nation to work with us?
Oh, that's a
do it.
great question.
I mean, let's just go Canada. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, that's our partner. They do NORAD.
Mhm.
It just from logical thought, you would think that they would take the lead maybe on cruise missile defense, because that's an
Right.
air defense domain, and it would relieve us a lot if we
Right.
had somebody else investing in this
Mhm.
to help us, because we seem to struggle with it.
Yeah.
Right? We're still what you were using, what you were flying, that F-15Es. We're
Mhm.
still doing that.
Yeah.
And that's expensive. That's 6 million versus so I'm just how do you incentivize this?
Yeah. No, I think that's a great question. And so now I'm going to say this is now Dale personally versus the department. So just let me give you an observation. We had this conversation yesterday. I'll reflect back. So personal story, I was in the Pentagon parking lot on 9/11. It was my first day on a new job. And I was in South Parking and I saw the airplane hit the building. So we all remember where we were in 9/11, those of us who were there, some of us more than others. I was supposed to have been in the wedge. I was late. I've never been late before to a military appointment. I was late to my first military appointment, providentially. The reason I share that story is, if you remember, how did the country respond on 9/12? Everybody was all in, right?
Yeah.
We just had that problem set. And as I mentioned, I was having a conversation yesterday about the threat. And on 9/10, if I would have told you there's a possibility that the nation's going to get attacked and we need to be prepared. And people would have looked at me and said, we're good. I've got oceans to protect me. I'm the best military in the world. Nobody's ever going to test us. And then they did. I would, and this is now a personal opinion, I think there's a little bit of that going on right now. I think there's ways in which folks, first off, don't necessarily believe in the nature of life, the things that you and I deal with on a daily
You
basis.
saying our allies? Are you saying someone like Canada?
I'm saying all across everybody, to include our own nation, is not quite yet back to believing 25 years hence that we're as vulnerable as I think we all know.
Or they're fat and happy.
It could be, but that said, okay. I would also say, though, that the way that we incentivize is, I am impressed every single day when we reach out to some of these. It could be food manufacturers, it could be the auto industry, We're talking to parts manufacturers, tooling companies, people that we don't traditionally deal with in the department. But when we call that CEO or that company president, we say, would you be interested in doing business with the Department of War? And would you be interested in talking to us about how you could scale into a product you've never done before? I have not yet had a no.
That's the US.
That is US industrial
I'm
base,
talking
right?
about
Now,
outside.
right. So
And that's part of your NDSS
Mhm.
to have burden share with.
that's
We can't be
absolutely correct.
conform. That's why we're having issues with Europe.
Right.
We've milked the
Well,
cow too long. We got
Yeah.
we got to get these guys to chip in.
And I think what you've seen is the president has done an incredibly exquisite job of convincing our partners and our allies that they have a pure stake in this, that their defense is their responsibility as much as anything else. We've seen the president raise the contribution levels. We have seen yesterday, if you probably saw, NATO announced we're changing the leadership of NATO. And that means that the European Union now has a command lead and a partnership that they've never held before in that nature at that level. So the buy-in that we're seeing from our
And that's where
from
the
our
money
partners,
is. EU's got
and that's
not NATO. EU's
right.
got it.
But that's the partnership, right?
Okay.
It's a responsibility. If we're there, right, and now they have the responsibility, that whole in a broader sense. Look, our partners and our allies are always at the table with us. The NATO defense ministers, those who we've worked with, as we engage around the globe, very positive reception
And that's the
shared
second,
responsibility.
and the president directive for the Golden Dome, that's the second thing
Mhm.
with the allies. But I know we're running, this is going fast, but I got to bring it back
Yeah, please.
to where we need to go.
Okay.
Which is bringing bringing in the commercial sector
Sure.
into the game, right? And we can go cloud, we got to have them because they're better than
Mhm.
what you've got
Yeah.
out there and assessing data, collecting data, processing data.
That's right.
How are we getting them into this? How are you incentivizing
Yeah.
with military stovepipes that go all the way back to World
Mhm.
War II?
Right.
Because everybody's scared of breaking codes and cyber and all that. How are you getting our commercial to reduce the cost and the burden and to make you go fast because they know how to go fast? How do you
Yeah.
bring them in at on scale big with new, as you can with a legacy? Let's go with the new systems that,
Mhm.
that are going to be developed
Yeah.
for you that you go.
No, so I think first and foremost, let me go back to our prime partners. You know, we have the major defense primes that we work with. That message is now resonating loud and clear, and you're seeing behavior start to change, and I'm very proud of that. And again, immense kudos to our president, to the secretary, and to Honorable Duffy for their leadership and the way that they've gone after that. What I would also say, though, is we are expanding that out because what we've seen, I want to go back to that. It may have been just a drop in the bucket in the sense of what we talked about. But when you look at the company's growth, right, what we promised them was if you get on board, if you change your commercial model, if you understand that what we're going to do is we're going to make partnership investments. Like, take, for example, when we did the deal with L3 Harris, $1 billion in equity. That $1 billion in equity was matched by another $5 billion by L3 Harris. So a $6 billion deal to invest in the companies so that they would accelerate that. What did we see? We saw company growth. We saw L3 actually started to split their company apart to create other companies, other sectors, and that stimulation is out there. But let me bring it down a level, right? Let's get to our suppliers. There are across our nation today, there are companies out there that are so vitally important to our defense industrial base, but they're small companies. And what those companies, what we want to see happen is not pass-throughs, but those companies get the investments so that they can grow, right? What we're doing and what we're seeing is we're seeing economic growth across our nation, which is the incentive for companies, right? This is America after all.
Yeah.
So when companies are seeing that they are growing, people are coming in, private capital is coming to the table to make huge investments into all of these companies. And so when you see, and there are people lining up, private investors are lining up to invest in the defense industry because they're seeing that's where we are growing as a nation. And so if you see immense growth, then what I get is immense capacity. I get immense speed.
But you got to cut the policies to allow them to make
and
profit.
We are.
Because they're not in it if they only get 10% profit on this. You know that. I think we all know that. And that's been there's a lot of the culture that needs to change to allow these commercial companies to.
That's right.
to
And
support it.
we're tracking margins. We're tracking how the business deals are being done, right? We are examining at a data level. This is the beauty of having the data, is we can get down to a data level to know exactly how the deal is, what they're paying for those. We know what the parts are. We examine those things. We know how many of them that they have. We know where they are in the supply chain. And then we can look across the board. And if there are companies that are struggling but they're a critical supplier, then we're going to invest in that company, because we want to, or bring private investors to that company, because I need those companies to succeed, and I need them to make more of those, so that we have a very predictable, very good demand signal, so that they can continue to grow. That builds upon itself. Success breeds success.
Can you give us an example of a commercial company that's non-defense, big prime, that's come in to help you at a scale at this magnitude, or are we still getting to
So
that point?
we are talking right now to a lot of the companies that you could probably would guess. First and foremost, companies that we started with are companies who have capacity or excess capacity today to go to scale. All right. So we looked at who you would think, right? Auto manufacturers, other places with large plants, large skilled, ready workforces, right?
Yes.
We're being very strategic about this, right? I don't want to turn around to a company and go, hey, could you get to scale? I'm looking for companies today with scale and a workforce to build us there. But on top of that, now we're going to the next level, is to look to companies who may not have that tooling or that factory capability, but have a large capacity that I can turn to. So there's non-traditionals in that space. The other idea is this. We talked about some of the really innovative companies out there that are producing product for us today. What they lack is scale. So then if I can take a company who is building great product for us today, many of these are in Ukraine today, or helping our partners, that I can then partner with a large factory level company who's never done that before. Now we can build a deal where I get everything I need and drive it at a cost and an expediency we've not seen before. Basically, if you remember Freedom's Forge, we're going back to 1941.
Where time's flying. So I do want to get to the big question here. From the outside,
none of those were big questions. I'm glad.
But from my perspective and from where we're at, how does the Golden Dome? We don't need to talk about what the systems are, but the architecture. How does this lead what you're doing? And from our perspective, it should lead, because it's brand new. On a new culture that they can create to go quick without all the old baggage that's out there with them. Are we leveraging? Are you enabling them to do what they need to do with policies? And you have to, like you told me, you have to take it over once it's proven. So that sustainment cost has got to be.
It's big,
crazy big.
It is.
So
first, again, kudos to General Gutlein and the team. They're working really, really hard. Everybody's Ellison supported that when we want to see this succeed. I want to start first and foremost by just talking about the command and control part of this. Is probably the most critical,
because we haven't been able to do that.
So there's so many great people that are driving into the middle of that, and I think we're going to see just the architecture alone for the command control system is going to be
and they
fantastic.
have all the authorities they need to do
absolutely
without over the service chiefs to do exactly what they want to do.
And because he's operating as a direct report to the secretary and the deputy, it changes the dynamics. The second piece of this then is taking advantage of the speed and scale at which we're producing the weapon systems. Obviously, that means we often talk about the all-up round, right? But when I'm talking about weapon systems, it's building out all the components of the weapon system, right? That's a very different problem set. So when I tend to sit down with General Gutlein, when I talk the word architecture, it's where launchers, what are we defending? Where does that go? What is the power systems that go into that? How do I sustain that system? How is it made resilient and redundant, right? So those are the investments that in my portfolio that I'm very focused on with him to build that out. So there's command and control. There's the logistics and sustainment of where in the locations he wants to deploy to first. How do we build those? How do we build the architecture for those? The enterprise that ties all of that back together again before I start putting rounds into systems. Right. All of that is what we're building now.
What about space? Because space doesn't have bases, and it's a different environment, and their policies now allowing them to be able to defend
Yeah.
and have effects from
And
space. So how do you
it's
that's the wide open.
well,
to that.
it's and I think, we so often in the past we looked at space as a separate architecture.
Yeah.
Space today is a very integrated architecture. We don't do anything without space. So when I'm talking about both command and control and the ability to do fires, that is all of that combined. It's not solely a terrestrial based.
And that's what
set.
Mike's bringing all
That's
that
it.
together. Right?
All of that comes together into one package.
And the one great thing I think has to happen is one fires, not have separate
That's right.
defensive fires
That's
and
right.
offensive fires.
Yeah.
Right. We got to get to that level.
And the ability to do that in real time and have all of that together that's exactly what's getting built out. It's going to be fantastic.
Okay, we only got a couple minutes.
Okay.
Do you have anything that I missed that you wanted to talk about? Let me see if we got any questions here.
No, but I think again, Riki, going back to the very beginning, we want to focus on how we defend our nation, right? How we look at the way that we enable that to happen today to make things get to what's in the National Defense Strategy is our investments that we're making across the entire industrial base. That includes the people that go with that. We think about how then we support the faraway fight, like in the Indo-Pacific, and what we're doing over there, and how the work that we do with Golden Dome. You and I talked about this, in Guam and other places that we're trying to build those things out. All of that in combination that's why I say, I started with a systems of systems approach. This is a systems of systems approach to everything that we're trying to solve.
I think we've covered all the questions except for maybe one.
Okay.
I'll ask this question. It's been a year since the Golden Dome announcement.
Sure.
When is the Department of War going to engage with the defense industry base with funding contracts to start building out from there?
Yeah, so we're very close to that. I would say this, right? We're already funding it because I'm producing the rounds that are going to go into it.
Okay.
So, right, and part of what we're accounting for in the ramp rates and the things that I'm driving towards are the things that General Gutlein needs. So we're getting after it today as he continues to roll out that architecture. We're already building those systems and putting those contracts in place to be ready to go so that we can get this deployed as quickly as possible.
Joe, you got this great vision.
Yeah.
You're a new you're building this new culture. What are the top challenges that face you, not you being able to do what
Yeah.
What's the big challenges that has to be beaten or overcome to be successful in what you're?
Yeah. So the first one I would probably go to is going to be funding, and not funding in the way that you think about it. Not I need more money. Necessarily, we will always do that, but it has to do with how do I get the most out of the cash that I've been provided by the Congress and that the president has advocated for, and do it in a way so that, as we talked earlier, I'm eliminating the layers so I can squeeze every penny out of that and go faster.
That's a fight right there with the people that are trying to stop that.
Right. And so, when I have to do a budget every single year and I'm doing 4 budgets simultaneously and I can only get a deal cut and funding for 1 year, the reason we went into multi-year deal is that I need multi-year funding, right? So the ability to get through all of that is critical. The other one that you touched on that I just want to go back to is we know we have a very short window to operate in, and culture slows us down.
Yeah.
And so everybody getting on board to understand we are trying to go as fast as we possibly can. The threat is real. We think that we need to be ready. We believe we have to be ready, and we're doing everything that we can to fulfill not only what's in the National Defense Strategy, but to protect.
So you're getting rid of those obstacles where
where we can eliminate the obstacle.
People.
That's it.
To get your culture.
That's it, exactly
on top of it.
Yeah,
right?
we've got to do both. If we can't get to that, the rest of it. Great Americans every day wake up and come do this job with us, and we love that. They're doing amazing work. We need to take all the obstacles down that slow them down from being successful.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great discussion. I really appreciate your candor, your trust, your openness on this. It was well done. You covered a lot of ground.
Thank you, sir.
So
appreciate
Dale, thank you. And we're obviously 100% behind you.
Thank you.
The President and the Secretary of War to make this happen, because it has to happen.
It does.
It has to happen to make our world safe.
It
has to happen else we're going to have a world war.
That's it.
That's how big this is.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And putting defensive rounds in there gives you options that you don't have today. So you don't have to go to war.
That's
So
it.
let's get this thing right and reshape it.
I would say, as my favorite football player continues to remind me, it's defense that wins championships.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, well, thank you for joining. Thank you.